This is a story of both survival and loss, of resilience and love. This is the story of Mark Jordan. It was September 2005. At that point, Mark Jordan and Jacqueline Perry had been married for almost 4 years, and their anniversary was coming up. They were both very active people who liked outdoor activities, so finding the perfect spot to spend their anniversary wasn't probably too hard for the two of them. They lived in Cambridge, a city in the Regional Municipality of Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, so they were well accustomed to modern life and its demands. In fact, both Mark and Jacqueline had important jobs. He was a software engineer, and she was a medical doctor. Despite the challenging character of their respective jobs, or maybe because of it, the young couple tried not to ignore their innate inclination toward nature. That's why, besides his regular job as a software engineer, Mark was also a scout leader. Mark and Jacqueline chose to spend their anniversary in the backcountry of Missinaibi Lake Provincial Park, a park situated in northern Ontario. They wanted a remote place, somewhere in the very heart of nature. Celebrations were in order not only because they were quickly approaching the 4-year mark as a wedded couple, but also because Jacqueline had just accepted a new job. The woman had been offered a part-time position at Cambridge Memorial Hospital's emergency department, where she was set to start her new job in less than a month. So the two of them embarked on a 2-week holiday, with big plans of camping and kayaking. As with any other inhabitants of Ontario, Mark and Jacqueline were well aware of the territory's immense beauty. Missinaibi Provincial Park, their destination, is located in northern Ontario. If you know anything about northern Ontario, it's probably the fact that the territory is huge. It actually covers 90% of the area of Ontario. And you may also know that the population is as scarce as the land is vast. Only 6% of Ontario's total population lives in the northern part of the province. It's all about the nature up there, with the boreal forest covering most of the land. And when it gets remote, it really gets remote. The distances are large, and the backcountry can be unforgiving even to experienced travelers. To the inexperienced or just unlucky ones, it can be deadly. Missinaibi Provincial Park is perfect for anyone who wants to spend some time away from the usual rush and the multiple stimuli of modern life. Overall, it's a good place for an escapade. The park is located at the center of Chapleau Crown Game Preserve, a fur-bearing animal preserve northeast of Lake Superior. Missinaibi is a bit over 310 miles long, encompassing multiple lakes, impressive waterfalls, and stunning whitewater, perfect for some adrenaline-inducing kayaking. There are several campsites and canoe sites, and as everywhere in the preserve, wildlife abounds in Missinaibi Provincial Park. Mark and Jacqueline chose one of the backcountry campsites on Missinaibi Lake. The site was secluded, both intimate and exciting enough for the two nature lovers. The two of them would often go hiking, and given their love for nature and Mark's experience as a scout leader, they had enough trust in their abilities to fend for themselves in the wilderness. The couple had to drive north to the park, and then they had to paddle their way to the campsite in a kayak. There's no indication that anything worrisome or at least suspicious had happened before Tuesday, September 6, 2005. Instead, the couple spent their days enjoying the outdoors, as they'd often done before, breathing in the fresh air and relishing in the nice stretch of their muscles after paddling their boat. However, their joy was soon cut short. What was meant to be a lifetime spent together turned into only a few hours of pain, desperation, and vain hope. September 6, 2005 started like every other day at the campsite. Later that afternoon, though, disaster struck, and with it came a gruesome fight for survival. Mark Jordan and Jacqueline Perry were preparing dinner at their campsite in a rugged, remote region within the park, near Lake Missinaibi. Everything seemed, looked, and sounded normal until it didn't. It all happened so quickly, there was no time to properly act. A black bear suddenly appeared at their campsite, and as if seeing a bear up close and personal wasn't enough, this animal didn't seem to be merely aggressive. No, the bear seemed to be predatory. There was no doubt the bear's intention was to kill. It struck lightning fast. In an instant, the bear leapt, pinning Jacqueline to the ground. The creature didn't waste any second. It grabbed the woman and then started dragging her into the bush. To Mark, it felt like time had stopped. Jacqueline, the woman he loved, his wife, was in the clutch of an apex predator, being dragged far away from him and into the wilderness, toward a certain death. Mark couldn't let it happen. If he knew one thing about black bears, it was that they can get scared if one manages to look bigger and fiercer than the beast. In other words, Mark Jordan knew he had to show the bear who the boss really was, no matter the cost. Saving Jacqueline wasn't a decision. It was way more than that. It was an instinct. Before the bear could disappear into the bush with a very wounded Jacqueline, Mark attacked the beast. The man got the bear in a headlock and started punching it in the head, causing the beast to drop Jacqueline. Its attention was now focused on Mark, and so was its rage. Using its claws and massive snapping jaws, the black bear struck back. It didn't matter to Mark. It didn't matter that his body was covered in lacerations, that several of his nerves had been severed by the furious black bear. Mark retaliated, using its Swiss Army knife to stab the beast 5 or 6 times. Suddenly, the animal left, wounded. The man's relentless attack succeeded, but his ordeal was far from over. Jacqueline was still on the ground, seriously injured. She needed help, but the campsite was too remote for rescuers to arrive that quickly. Mark had to get her somewhere safe. He picked Jacqueline up in his arms and started running toward the kayak. His wounds were gushing blood, but nothing was more important to him than making sure Jacqueline survived. Desperate, he climbed into the kayak and started paddling toward the nearest campsite. Badly wounded himself, Mark paddled for almost a mile, crying for help, and then someone heard him. 2 hikers, a father and son from Pennsylvania, heard the screams for help and rushed to Mark's aid. The 2 of them had fought off a black bear themselves less than an hour before hearing Mark's cries. Together, the 3 men paddled for 90 more minutes before coming across a pontoon boat with an off-duty police officer and a doctor from North Carolina on board. It was a miracle. The doctor tried to save Jacqueline Perry while the boat continued on to the park office some 6 miles away. Mark stood by his wife's side, hoping and praying she would survive her brutal wounds. But Jacqueline Perry died before they could make it to the boat office, despite her husband's heroic efforts to save her. 3 hours after the attack, Mark Jordan was taken to Sudbury Regional Hospital. His condition was stable, but he had suffered multiple lacerations, many puncture wounds, and severed nerves. Before doctors could operate, they had to make sure there was no possibility for infection. Meanwhile, police and park workers began their efforts to find the bear, as well as other campers. With visitors not being required to tell park officials they'd entered the area, staff wasn't exactly sure how many people they were looking for. On September 10th, 4 days after the attack, the Ministry of Natural Resources killed a black bear believed responsible for the fatal attack. The bear was found, shot, and killed near the site of the attack. The animal was male and not fully grown, and it had a wound to its neck, one probably inflicted by Mark's knife. Mark Jordan was released from the hospital after getting 300 stitches for his injuries. 2 years later, in 2007, he was given the Star of Courage Award from Governor General Michael Jean. In an interview, the man said he regretted not killing the bear. He also said getting the Star of Courage would help keep Jacqueline Perry's memory alive.